You're looking at a live shot as technical workers begin the final stages of the crane removal here at the site of the downtown crane collapse at Bertram and Bernard Street. There are several workers you can see in a basket right now trying to connect the one portion that remains, still touching the ground and obviously made contact with the building. Workers from the Central Okanagan Emergency Operations Center tell us that the next step of the cleanup operation is getting underway this afternoon. Crews are lifting the counterweight, or the final pieces of the crane is being removed. That's what you're looking at right now. After it's removed, FortisBC may be allowed on site to assess its electrical transformer and possibly restore power to some of the remaining buildings still affected, including 1433 St. Paul Street and a number of businesses in that building who haven't had power since the crane collapse and have had to work from home or suspend their operations altogether. I'm Rob Gibson reporting live from the scene of the downtown crane collapse here in downtown Kelowna, just off of Doyle Avenue. You can see behind me crane workers are in the basket. They are connecting cables to what appears to be the top portion, the remaining portion of the crane that is still on site. Once that portion of the crane is removed, workers from FortisBC are expected to arrive on scene and begin the process of examining the power lines and hopefully get some of the power restored to some of the buildings in the area that are still without power after it's been almost a week since last Monday, since this crane collapsed. Everything has been shut down. I'm at the site where tributes are pouring in. You can see high-vis vests hanging from the fence that blockade the work site from the rest of Doyle Avenue. Tributes have been pouring in for the 5 victims that were killed in this tragic collapse. 4 of them were workers. 1 was an employee who was in the building impacted by the crane. You can see the workers are working near that building right now. Central Okanagan Emergency Operations Center spokesperson Maria Lee says the technical crews will be removing the crane or the remaining portions of the crane, and that piece has been ongoing. This is believed to be the final stage of the removal process, and at that point then FortisBC will be allowed on site, and workers should have better access to the area to determine what else needs to be done. The corner of this building, you can see the damage that's left behind now that the rest of the crane has been removed. We'll have a better idea of the damage to that building and some of the other surrounding buildings once workers can access that area. You're looking at a live shot of the last stages of the crane dismantling in downtown Kelowna, the scene of the deaths of 4 individuals, including 2 brothers who were killed in the collapse, Eric and Patrick Stemmer. Jared Zook was working on the crane when he lost his life. And 23-year-old Kaylin Vilnius was also killed in this tragic collapse. A 5th victim, Brad Swazalak, was working in the building beside the construction zone. He lost his life in this tragic crane collapse as well. Workers are now removing the final portion of the crane from the site. If this can be completed today, Central Okanagan Emergency indicates that FortisBC will be able to get on the scene and remove that area, and then they'll be able to check on the power. Many of the businesses and residences that are still under the evac order have no power. People continue to add donations. Group has just brought flowers. That was the Vilnius family laying flowers, paying tribute to their son who was killed in this tragic accident. The father says he's been here every day. He doesn't want to talk. He's still trying to come to terms with this tragic accident. So sorry. You're looking at a live shot as workers begin the final stage of the process of removing the crane. It's hoped that once this piece is removed from the scene, FortisBC will be able to access the work site and see about restoring power to some of the businesses and residences that have been without power for 7 days now. Tributes, flowers, photos, messages have been left here. High-vis vests are hanging around the area as people try to come to grips with this tragedy that has struck Kelowna. and really the entire country. You're looking at a live shot as workers begin the process of dismantling the final portion of the crane that still remains at the scene of this tragic crane collapse, which happened 7 days ago. Three different pieces of equipment have now been brought in to connect to the remaining piece of the crane. Workers are hopeful they can get that piece out of there, and then Fortis BC workers can access the site, and the work of removing the rest of the debris can begin. I'm set up at the site of a makeshift memorial for the 5 people who lost their lives in this tragic event. The Vilnius family was just here to drop more flowers. Father says he's been here every day. His heart is broken, and he has no words. You're looking at a live shot as workers begin the process of removing the last portion of the crane that still remains on the scene of the construction site, which was the scene of a deadly crane collapse a week ago. Workers are trying to remove the last piece so that the rest of the construction crews and Fortis BC can access the location and begin the process of cleanup. Central Okanagan Emergency Operations spokesperson Maria Lee says the technical crews removing the crane or the remaining portions of the crane is ongoing right now. It's status quo for the evacuation orders. That may change later this afternoon. They're hopeful that once this piece is removed, the pace of recovery and repair and cleanup will quicken, and businesses and individuals who have been displaced for the last week will be able to return to their homes and their work. You can see workers on the building. Several connections have already been made to the remaining piece of the crane. I'm located at the site of a makeshift vigil and memorial for the 5 people who lost their lives in this tragic accident. The Vilnius family was just on scene, dropping more flowers, saying prayers. I spoke briefly with the father. He said he is beyond upset. Still hasn't come to terms with losing his young son. Once this portion of the crane is removed, workers will be able to access the construction site. Fortis BC will be able to check the power. And things may begin to return to somewhat normal in downtown Kelowna, although this city will be a long time recovering from such a horrible tragedy. I'm Rob Gibson reporting live from the scene of this tragic crane collapse as workers work to remove the final portion of the crane, which you can see still remains. You're looking at a live shot as workers begin the process of removing what remains of the crane that collapsed here a week ago. You can see that it is a big job and it is a slow job. I'm Rob Gibson reporting live from the scene as workers begin the process of removing what remains of the crane that collapsed here a week ago. Central Okanagan Emergency Operations say these are the next step in the cleanup operation, and they're hopeful that if this piece can be removed, Fortis BC and cleanup workers that can then access the site and progress on cleanup should continue at a quicker pace. How long that's going to take is unknown at this time, as there are still obviously serious concerns about safety surrounding this area. Central Okanagan Emergency Operations Center spokesperson Maria Lee tells Castanet that the technical crews removing the crane, the remaining portions of the crane, is still ongoing, and it is status quo as far as the evacuation orders surrounding the businesses and residences that have been asked to leave the premises, either because of safety issues or a lack of power. Check Castanet's website for the latest on those areas and the surrounding zones that are impacted by the evacuation order. I'm located at the site of a makeshift memorial for those who lost their lives in this tragic event. The Vilnius family was here a short while ago. They came and dropped off flowers. I spoke with the father. He said his heart is broken and he is still struggling to come to terms with the loss of his son. He did not want to go on camera, but he did indicate that his heart is broken and he's still struggling to come to terms with the tragic loss. I'm Rob Gibson reporting live from the scene of the tragic crane collapse in downtown Kelowna. Almost 7 days exactly since this crane collapsed. Their workers are now removing the final portion of the crane. You can see they brought in other heavy equipment and they have attached lines and cables to the remaining piece of crane. There is other equipment on the ground clearing the area. Central Okanagan Emergency indicates that these workers are performing the last bit of this project. And if they can clear the area today, they're hopeful that FortisBC and the rest of the cleanup crews will be able to access the scene. Some of the residents who've been out of their homes on evacuation order will be allowed to return. Some of the businesses that have been without power will have that power restored. But nothing can proceed until this last piece has been removed. I'm Rob Gibson reporting live from the scene of the tragic crane collapse in downtown Kelowna. As you can see behind me, workers are on the final stage of removing the portion of the crane that is still on the scene here in downtown Kelowna. I'm also set up at the scene of a makeshift memorial which continues to grow. Earlier today, the family of the Vilnius family stopped by to commemorate their son who was killed in this tragedy, Kalen. I spoke with the father. He did not want to go on camera, but he said his heart is broken. He's still trying to come to terms with this tragedy. And he says he has been here every day. Once this final piece of the crane is removed, workers will have better access to the site, and the pace of the cleanup and the pace of the progress should pick up. A spokesperson for the Central Okanagan Emergency Operations Center, Maria Lee, tells Castanet that the technical crews are removing the crane, the remaining portions of the crane. It is status quo as far as the evacuation orders go at this point until that piece is removed and a further assessment can be done. And then FortisBC will be able to access the site to see what state the transformer is in and to begin their repairs.